Okay, thank you very much. We are, despite the disruptions, could you just put the presentation, please? First and foremost, I would like to start acknowledging several key institutions and people that have made possible this summer summer school today here. First, Ayuda and Acción, particularly Jaime Díaz, Iván Ascasíbar, Esther, Raquel, Blanca, and many other for organizing this event. Second, nose teams, Olga Penmeyer, the room, for sponsorship. And third, the UIK General Office, Itziar Azcue, later between the room as well, Estivaliz, Aintzane, and the rest of the people working every year for logistics and arrangements in this Miramar Palace. It goes without saying that I'm more than delighted to welcome and to have a great lineup of speakers, international and also local, national, regional speakers. So my presentation aims first, because we have been listening to the Global South perspective, so we have a challenge here, and it's how to intertwine the precedent great keynote conference by Professor Ayuda while introducing the next speaker, and then the second block in the afternoon, the platforms, the tools, the agora, and tomorrow the implications. So second, I will slightly introduce several contents of this summer school in my presentation, and ultimately I use the title, this long title, it's like AI for Social Innovation, building a joint action research framework intertwining the Global South, Global North, Global South for an emerging and equitable tech agenda. But I'm going to start with a very, very silly question, okay? Extremely silly question. And it's, we had a very nice lunchtime in Madrid. Thank you, Jorge. The Deputy Director of Ayuda and Acción is on the back of the room. So he provoked me with two questions that are going to be exactly on the first slide. So suddenly I remember that, okay, Ayona, you are not going to the only one. So I'm pressing the button. Okay, verdad. Okay. If you complain about technology, then technology came back to you. Okay, anyway. I think it's very naive to ask directly, because Jorge suddenly say, can AI end world poverty? And I think that is too strong, but at least is why I wanted to ask directly. Do you think that AI can alleviate world poverty, particularly in the Global South? Who think does this? Could you just raise your hand? Okay, 1, 2, okay, kind of. Well, I was expecting less optimism, to be honest. So, but why I'm just suggesting or provoking with this very silly question? Because I think that we're in a stage to, let's say, after this provocation, to start reconciling tech utopias. Okay, so I have two utopias on the screen. The first one is a book that I think is a good book, to be honest. And the second one is I'm connecting Ayona's presentation with Connor's presentation, because Connor is going to pretty much developing the second part. So the first tech utopia is a book called Fully Automated Luxury Communism by the British author that is from the Labour Party, Aaron Bastani, published in 2022. And he has the perspective in the global north could be understood as technology as a catalyst for post-scarcity. He envisions AI and automation leading to a world where material abundance is available for all. The focus is redistribution of wealth through challenging even the capitalist structures. But there is a critique that also this utopian vision could be seen only relevant from in developed economies with advanced technological infrastructure. So, and the other utopian perspective, or utopian view, is not that utopian because it's rolling out at the moment in the global south, as you might know, that is WorldCoin. That Connor is going to expand this vision. And in the global south, the idea of technology as means for basic equity, meaning that WorldCoin is proposing, I'm not going to interpret the ethical and the moral values behind that, but he's proposing the use of cryptocurrency and AI to provide the universal basic income as a financial safety net addressing immediate socioeconomic disparity. The focus is a practical implementation to alleviate, as I provoked you before the question, poverty in developing countries. But the point is, and here's the nitty-gritty of that, the challenges in adoption, accessibility, and trust in regions with less technological penetration and infrastructure. So I don't expect any simple answer to this dichotomy because there are two very extreme different perspectives about how AI could be developed, but also in relation to the global north and the global south. So stemming from that, I have three caveats before I'm going to present the outline of my presentation. As you are going to see, this summer school is critical, but at the same time constructive. But in this case, I'm going to be even self-critical with many things that we are advocating, meaning decentralization, for instance. So the first caveat is, I call it the hammer of AI. And it's again, I need to acknowledge Jorge because that was part of the second provocation that he told me. And Jorge, you may remember you said something about the nails and the hammer. So the point is that the pervasive belief of AI as the universal solution to every societal challenge echoes Abraham Maslow's famous metaphor. If the only tool that you have is a hammer, you tend to see every problem as a nail. So this fixation on AI often overshadows the equally critical process of datafication, the transformation of various forms of social life into quantifiable data. By focusing predominantly on AI, we risk neglecting the broader context in which data is generated, processed, and governed, leading to an incomplete understanding of the technological landscape. The challenge is to decouple our obsession, our noise, is why the name of this summer course is an obsession, with AI as a standalone solution and to consider the integral role of datafication in shaping our digital futures. So that's why the hammer of AI is that at the moment, AI is a hammer that seems to be useful almost for everything. And as we have seen in the previous keynote speaker, well, I think that there are quite a lot of buts on this. The second caveat that I would like to make, and it's a discussion between probably Connor and me over the last 2-3 years since we met in Stanford, but this, I call it the illusion of decentralization. Okay, so as cited in the white paper published by Decentralization Research Center and M as A by Michael Cooper in a report, in a white paper called Decentralized Possibilities for Locally Led Development, I really recommend reading it, it's in open access. While decentralized technologies such as blockchain and decentralized autonomous organizations are heralded as harbingers of digital democratization, there is a paradoxical risk that they might reinforce existing power structures or create even new forms of centralization. The governance models of many decentralized systems often concentrate power among a small group of technically proficient actors, the tech-savvy actors, undermining the democratic ideals that apparently and paradoxically they purport to uphold. This raises questions like, are we truly decentralizing power? Or are we merely shifting it into the hands of a new elite under the guise of technological innovation? So it's why I think that we need to embrace, and we are going to embrace decentralization, but at the same time, I think that we have also some caveats that we need to make. And the third one is that there is the ethical mirage of technological neutrality. There is a persistent belief that technologies, particularly AI, are neutral tools that merely reflects the data and algorithms they are based on. However, this ignores the complex socio-political context in which these technologies are developed and deployed, as we have seen in the keynote presentation. The design and the application of AI systems are inherently value-laden, influenced by the biases, assumptions, and interests of their creators. This raises critical ethical concerns. Whose values are being embedded in these systems, and who benefits from this deployment? Acknowledging the non-neutrality of technology is crucial for fostering a more inclusive and equitable approach to AI driven by social innovation. So these three caveats, and the previous provocation about this tech utopian potential reconciliation, are deep reflections and discussions on the underlying assumptions driving current debates around AI and datafication, encouraging you participants to critically engage with the complexities, but also the contradictions that they are inherent to this technology. So without further ado, after this, this is the outline. So after my introduction, I would like to remind of the objectives, a diagnosis on this topic, the research and policy diagnosis, 3 pervasive emerging trends, 2 research questions. I think that there are some things that have been coming out in the previous presentation that I'd like to put it like in a literature review. And then I'm going to develop the framework, and I'm going to present some cases and ending up my presentation with 10 implications and 3 final remarks. So without further ado, the objectives, I think they are is in the program of the summer course. So to position, the first objective is to position the debate beyond the noise of algorithms and datafication caused by AI within the contrasting context of the global south and the global north. The second objective is to adopt a fair and equitable stance on the integration of emerging technologies by exploring, and I think that what we are going to do with the next presentation as well, exploring the decentralized approaches, the alternatives that Web3, for instance, is offering already to us, while emphasizing the involvement of vulnerable communities in discussions around digital justice that is in a very great interest of Ayuda and Acción, and also Professor Ayuda mentioned in her keynote. And the third objective of this summer school is to provide a platform to not only critically but also constructively analyze how AI can either bridge or even exacerbate the socioeconomic and the technopolitical disparities between the global south and the global north. So I would like to bring here in the diagnosis, I think that probably I started connecting blocks. Ivan Askasibar is going to talk this afternoon about one platform, but probably it resonates with a project that we developed when I was senior researcher at the University of Oxford on Future of Cities in 2017 and in 2019, and Ayuda and Acción. I'm not going to expand because there are 2 publications in open access, but mostly we did fieldwork, very much more humble fieldwork that the Regional Futures is doing. But I think that it's necessary to also start stemming from our analysis from that. And I have there even to connect Regional Futures, ERC project, our humble action research intervention that was called a Smart Rural Community that was developed in Colombia in the post-conflict area of Bolivar. As you can see, those with the hat is myself, and Ivan is on the bottom left. Ivan is just, so I know it's very funny, but that was real. So and I appreciate a lot the opportunity to that. But just in a nutshell, how to compare? I think that beyond clear differences, but while Regional Future is assessing the impact of municipal digitalization, urbanization, shaping the dynamics in the global south, our aim was much more humble in this sense, focusing on how to empower rural communities with ICT and social innovation. So, stemming from that, I would like to present something that I think is necessary, and is probably a very VA's approach, but in April and June, very relevant reports, I would say, they were published by the World Economic Forum. So I think it's worth, I really recommend reading the two of them. They are not very long. But first, because the World Economic Forum mapped out the social innovation sectors in relation to AI, consisting of 300 social innovators worldwide, scanning over 50 countries, as well as 90 initiatives. I mean, I'm not going to go in depth, but just to provide a policy perspective, global perspective, 28% of social innovators were using AI to advance access to health, whereas 21% of social innovators, they were applying for tackling climate solutions, and 16% they were focusing on enhancing livelihoods and economic development. This is the way in which the World Economic Forum has been, let's say, summarizing the current status of AI from the social innovation perspective, which is, well, is good. There you have a list of references up there, so it's not the only one. There are some other reports about Reuters, about other institutions that is worth reading, but most importantly, at least in my analysis or my interpretation, social innovators, they were focusing primarily in US, India, and United Kingdom as a highest prevalence of social innovators deploying AI, followed by Kenya, Brazil, and Nigeria. But as you can see, I have put 3 arrows because they are not by chance that the ERC Regional Futures is also represented in this, because of course it is India, it is Kenya, and it is Mexico represented. So just in a nutshell, because I don't want to go in there, but there is a lot going on. A lot that should be seen from a very critical perspective. In South Asia, India, becoming a beacon for AI in social innovation largely due to its rapid technological adoption and strong government support. That's what World Economic Forum says. It's not my interpretation. Probably we can discuss whether this is partially like that or not. But the point is that there are some initiatives, government initiatives like Bashini to enhance the AI adoption, and also benefiting social enterprises like Hagdar Shak and Agami. In the Southeast Asia, Singapore, Indonesia, and Philippines stand out, making the 25% of the region's social innovators. And for example, 2 projects that they emphasize is funding societies and biorhythms. In North America, of course, $25 billion leading the AI market globally, with projects like Blue Dot, which uses AI to predict disease spread. In Africa, for instance, apart from the countries that I mentioned, Cameroon and Malawi also are deploying very interesting projects that actually, Ivan, DECOM-X was very similar to the project that you are going to present, because it's resonating with a marketplace, the way in which different actors can exchange something. So DECOM-X, when I was reading that, I thought that it has something to do with something that you are going to present later on. So then Oceania is very much in Australia and New Zealand. All the AI is, as you can see, is focused on satellite imagery and AI as an early warning system against wildfires. So environmental protection has a strong focus on that. And in the list, you can always think about the exotic places, the global south, but it was funny because my favorite one, yesterday I tweeted, it was the Belgian enterprise under the umbrella of the European Green Deal and AI Act, as Iona mentioned. that they have a very funny project, very interesting project, because I love that is called biodiversity, which is pretty much AI-based pollution monitoring, leveraging bees as natural drones, collecting data from many places. I mean, they respect the environmental system in which bees, they have their own natural system, but they have some sensors that they collect data through bees. So, I mean, it's a very good way to combine the digital and the sustainability as such, and it's not that far, it's in Brussels. So sometimes we don't have to go that far, And Brazil, of course, Brazil has a strong emphasis in the report, pretty much because some projects, but I would go to the last one, an impacto is actually the presidential decree in favor of social innovation. So for Brazil, social innovation is not just a simple statement in a paper, because it's something that is influencing the whole policy system. So I'm not going to go to technicalities, but probably some people are going to talk about that. I think it's worth also saying, but machine learning is pretty much covering the usage of AI in all these projects. You have predictive analytics and also natural language processing, but pretty much is machine learning there. So just briefly before going further, but according to this analysis, the barriers for adopting AI in social innovation could be trust gap and systemic bias, technical complexity and skills gap, resource intensity, data quality, very important. If you don't have good data, you don't have good AI, very simple. Balancing social and business objectives, regulatory and ethical consideration, access to AI technology, and collaboration between stakeholders. And for example, in the side of the benefits, efficiency and productivity, data-driven decision-making, real-time responsiveness, personalization, information and self-government, innovative access, and expanding scale and reach. So to end up this analysis of this, I think that there are like 5 different key points about this diagnosis. The first one is the digital and data divide as one of the key challenges for implementing AI through social innovation, the governance gaps, the importance of corruption and the relevance of corruption in many systems, the impact on vulnerable communities, as we have seen in the keynote presentation, the economic disparities that probably AI could just reinforce, and also the ethical and social implications. So I was wondering whether to present this framework, but this is the framework that the World Economic Forum has developed. But if you read between lines, they have literally copy-pasted from IBM. I prefer to avoid any kind of considerations. It's fine, but for me it's not enough. I mean, pretty much because they are not even mentioning anything about data ownership. They don't even consider any relationship with data. I've been searching a little bit about this potential lack of interpretation, and all the information that I have gathered is because the World Economic Forum always try to invest in established technologies. And so far, Connor, this is a question for you. The blockchain and the Web3 is still very emerging technology. So it's why the reason why probably World Economic Forum in Davos is still very hesitant with integrating the centralized model, as probably you are going to advocate later on. So moving forward in my presentation, is why the question probably is why decentralization matters in this context. It's a strategic imperative. We can answer, well, the promised land of decentralization is that decentralization empowers local communities, promoting data sovereignty, or mitigating power concentration and enhancing digital justice, or even a concept that I would like to address here, data cooperatives, catalyzing social innovation through data cooperatives. We have Javi Creus in the afternoon as well in the session that we are going to develop about data cooperatives, building resilient and sustainable smart rural communities, or even driving ethical and transparent technological solution. Anyway, The debate is open. I just wanted to encourage, but there are three main pervasive trends. And the first one is that there are data restrictions. There is a very good article that was published in the New York Times with this title, so I'm not going to repeat that. I think it's very necessary to read it, because mainly what he's saying is that be careful with your assumptions around AI, because AI rely entirely on data, and data has strongly much more restrictions. So we are encouraging global disparities. So I mean, the correlation between AI and data, Jorge, once again, should be carefully analyzed, because we cannot deploy AI without considering the data flows and the data restrictions and data regulations and so on and so forth. But again, better than myself, I think it's worth, the author is Rose, and it was published I think 2 weeks ago, something like that. The second emerging trend is the report that was published by the Centralization Research Center I mentioned before, by Michael Cooper. We had a nice conversation in Washington about blockchain as a way to use for locally led development, and recently was published in a blog in the London School of Economics. Very short article, but I think it's worth reading it. And the last one is the decentralized AI and socio-political implications. The idea that probably we need to also consider decentralization as a way to use blockchain, for instance, to avoid some kind of dysfunctions of socio-political context. I mentioned more than once corruption. Again, I think that probably this is and there is a paper also published very recently on this topic. So the two research questions that I think we are answering here is how can we implement social innovation processes that not only embrace technology and AI, but also contribute to promoting just an ethical social change. And the second question is how can we serve civil society with technology rather than not the other way around. So because we are talking a lot and I'm opening up quite a lot of topics, I think it's also worth bringing here some present authors. They are bringing some interpretations, some good knowledge on that. And for example, Rob Lalka, he's from the US, an author from the US. I think that we need to start really understanding, because very Eurocentric perspective, and is why probably the next speaker is going to give us another kind of vision, is very Eurocentric perspective, just summarizing what is going on in Silicon Valley. And it's why I really believe that Rob Lalka, we have the chance to be with him in Washington as well. He has a very good book called Venture Alchemist. And he is saying that probably the true venture alchemists are those who transform ventures by prioritizing social impact over profit, unlike Mark Zuckerberg, Elon Musk, blah, 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 blah. Okay, but I think it's worth, and he's also focusing on decentralized technologies and the importance of digital justice. I'm going to very quickly, because there are references, so you can focus on that. I think that Ayuda focused on gender, but he has expansively researched on colonialism and post-colonialism, right? I think that a good connection with this perspective is the book by Ulises Mejias from Mexico, by the way, and Nick Aldrich from the London School of Economics, when they are suggesting data colonialism as a way to extract data. The point is that, for example, with the last point, I'm a bit hesitant. They suggest at the end of the book a collective resistance. I think that, to be honest, resisting is not enough. So it's why I think that emancipatory strategies, for example, I'm much more in favor, or at least I found much more interesting the approach in India, when people can empower with technology, not just resist as such. I know that it's a very terminological discussion, but sometimes, at least from the academia, the concept is also resist. And I believe that we can go even beyond resisting. And it's why data cooperatives, that could be a good way to empower communities. Anyway, this is something that, for example, Ayuda mentioned, the importance of people working behind on the backstage. I mean, the data workers, and it's a very good book by Muldoon, Graham, and Kant, they talk about data workers. I mean, these people that they are feeding the machine, they are feeding this kind of black box that it seems that they are naturally fed and is not, and in very precarious ways. And another good reference is, this is probably the most recent one, was published last week, I guess, by Primavera de Filippi, that I had the chance to be working in California with her. Well, they are truly believers of the importance of blockchain. I have quite a strong discussion still with them, but because they believe that the governance structure that might be weak or even corrupted could be fixed. I don't know, Conor, what you think about that. I'm putting a lot of questions on your table, I know, but I think there's an open discussion. So, but they believe that blockchain could be not the solution, but at least another kind of governance technological infrastructure that could help. So this is a very recent thing. This is also another good contribution on decentralized autonomous organizations in order to complement what blockchain can do. I wanted to bring here Nathan Schneider's book, Governable Spaces, because, for example, Nathan is very keen on thinking that technology requires a very specific design from the perspective of community. Instead of buying what Google or what Amazon or what the big techs are giving us, he's given a lot of importance to the user autonomy in order to design technology by themselves. Probably this is my favorite. I don't know, Ayona, if you agree with that. You are much more geographer than myself, but probably this is the best ethnographic book on vulnerable communities and automation. At least it's focused on the US, of course, by Virginia Eubank, I think that he's spot on in terms of addressing vulnerable communities and how the poor, in this case, could be punished even more than the rest of the societal segments. And last and not least, because Ayona has been underlining a lot the gender gap and the gender issue. This is a very controversial book. Not everybody might like it, but I think that should be on the list as well. And it critiques the predominantly white male and techno-heroic narratives on data science. It's an intersectional feminist thought book, let's say so. And it shows the challenges to the male-female binary that can help to challenge other hierarchical classification systems. Again, it's an MIT Press book. I think it's a good contribution, but again, probably not everybody might like it. So just going to the end of my presentation, okay? As you have noticed, I have mentioned quite a lot of words, keywords, glossary. Of course, I'm not going to go in depth. This is probably some of the concepts that we are going to be talking about these days, today and tomorrow. But I would like to just focus on the three that I have just underlined, because probably this is connecting with the next presentation. And it's one potential action research framework. And it's why, again, in a nutshell, I don't expect we to become experts on that, but at least what's going on with these blockchain, DAOs, and data cops? Well, I think that blockchain in itself, a definition of blockchain is the centralized layer for transparency and security, just in a very short way. That provides some decentralized infrastructure for peer-to-peer governance by smart contracts, that at the same time can be the governance for potential community-owned data management that we are going to talk in the afternoon called data cops, that at the same time secures data. Again, this is in the material that has been shared. I'm not going to go in depth, but there is a strong, at the moment, research on how these three concepts could just be combined in order to create own designs for data and also for AI. About data cops, there's quite a lot of publications and research on that, but to be honest, I think that we need to be also fair and probably this is for the afternoon, this conversation, that still data cops is, and we've been talking, Connor and myself, during the weekend as well, about data cops, and there are a lot of attempts to create data cops, but always they face the same issue, the same challenge, scalability. They start scaling up, that they stop. And the same happens to another paradigm that is platform cooperatives that probably you might be familiar with. So again, there are a lot of things. Probably this is going to be the next evolvement of data governance, but still we need to be very careful on them. And I'm just going to the end of my presentation. I have two lists of cases. This is the cases that we can say established ecosystem, let's say, without the centralized models. And I have just put in green those that could have a very high feasibility degree. And I would like to underline, for example, DiMaggi from the US, but also TensorFlow Lite, and Agrimetrics, very interesting from the agriculture data, and the last, Suki, which is an AI-powered medical assistant that streamlines documentation for healthcare providers. So this is a list of AI that is used at the moment, currently in different countries, to implement social innovation. And in the second list that I'm going to present, for instance, there is a potential ecosystem of the centralized Web3 emerging technologies. And again, probably Connor can expand if you want, but there are very good examples. I don't know, for example, my favorite so far is Fishcoin. Fishcoin, like a blockchain-based platform, incentivizing sustainable seafood supply chain management. If you go to the website, I think it's amazing, and that you can track the different kind of the value chain management of seafood worldwide, which is quite impressive, at least for me. Gitcoin is also underlined, Banku as well, and the other I have just underlined the other thing, but you have in the documentation. Probably Consensus Social Impact is an NGO working on that, so I think that probably Ayuda and Acción could have some interest in exploring further. Anyway, just to end up my presentation. So the implications of this discussion of AI for social innovation could be how to empower through decentralization, how data sovereignty could be considered a human right in itself in some indigenous communities. I didn't mention that. For example, in New Zealand is very strong, this approach, in Brazil as well. Mitigating power concentration through decentralized technologies, the ethical AI through community governance using DAOs is another potential implication. The resilience to distributed networks, as we have seen with cases of even using WhatsApp in the community of female group in Delhi. Inclusive innovation, using Web3 technologies that can enable inclusive innovation. Transparency and accountability, and is the role that blockchain probably can play on this. The sustainable digital commons, the cross-border collaboration and the cross-border difficulties to share data, I would add, on the other hand, and finally bridging the digital divide. So, final remarks. A strategic imperative for equity. Is decentralization this imperative? Decentralization probably is not just a technological choice, but a strategic imperative for ensuring equity and in AI's deployment and benefits. It allows us to design systems that prioritize people over profits and empowers communities to take control of their digital futures. That's the promised land of decentralization. But I would like to add that decentralization could be used, and sometimes is used, for empowering some specific communities. And therefore, I think that we need to be also very, very cautious about how we embrace decentralization. Catalyst for social innovation, integrating Web3 technologies with AI is essential for fostering true innovation. The last final remark, future-proofing AI for social good. By embedding both decentralization and Web3 principles into AI systems, we can future-proof these technologies to be more adaptable, resilient, and aligned with the long-term needs of society. So this approach ensures that AI serves as a tool, as it has been mentioned in the keynote as well, just as a tool for empowering rather than controlling and rather than surveilling. So that's the end of my presentation. And again, I don't know if we have just achieved or not to reconcile tech utopian, because probably we just need more than optimism and good faith. Probably we need shared goals of equity and inclusion. Probably we need technological infrastructure and decentralization. Probably we need local adaptation of global technologies, very necessary. We didn't talk that much. Probably we are going to talk these days. And the last, probably, again, wishful thinking. But, well, we're in a summer school, so we can talk about that collaborative global frameworks to achieve all these goals. So that's the end of my presentation. So I'm more than happy to, we have at the moment some time for a question, but then we can move on to the coffee break. And then we are going to have the third presenter of the day. So thank you very much. So any question? Yes, please. Thank you very much, Ayona. The microphone.
Thank you so much, Igor, for this presentation. It really brought it all together, and great that there was no technical glitches. I had a more basic question because, and this is something I'm encountering in my work as well, is how to actually define AI, because AI can be ChatGPT. It can also be tiny algorithms that are already present, even 10 years back in some of the coding and apps. Mm-hmm. For example, WhatsApp has AI built into it. Instagram has AI built into it. Facebook is one of the biggest AI manufacturers for directing political thought. So I'm kind of thinking, how should we even begin to describe AI? And perhaps this goes back to questions of before, people would say, how do we define smart cities? Mm-hmm. It's so, anything can be AI, because the moment you start coding and start making algorithms and giving them some kind of autonomy to come up with some sort of learning, mm-hmm. It becomes an AI. Yeah. So mm-hmm. What is AI in your thinking? Thank you
very much for that question. I think this question, for example, they have spent like 5 years at least to have an agreement in the European Commission for an AI Act, because exactly the definition of AI could be very broad, could be very narrow, right? At the moment, I think that when we are talking about AI, and for example, you mentioned the elephant in the room, which is ChatGPT, we are talking about generative AI. But of course, there are different degrees of AI. And but at the moment, I think that everything has been sold to us like a very simplistic universe of a toolbox, and I think it's not that simple. But for me, I think that the question is relevant, and we've been discussing 1 decade about the smart cities, Ayona. Probably at the moment it's not fashionable about the smart cities as such, but how this discussion end up? Well, we added the critical layer to the smart city. We thought that the bottom-up was necessary. It wasn't very, very cool, very great to have a bottom-up, top-down models. But the still is there, the debate is there. So I think that with AI, probably what is going to happen is exactly the same. We are going to have much more knowledge about different kind of, I mentioned, machine learning, predictive analytics, and natural language processing. That's the World Economic Forum is mentioning about the 3 different kind of families of AI. But of course, they are a lot, and it depends on the sector. I believe that, for example, it's not the same. I mentioned healthcare, I mentioned economic development, I mentioned education. The data, we have experts in the room, even more than me, on data governance, but the data that is used in these sectors has nothing to do. And probably the AI that they are going to be using, are different as well. So my answer would be, you know what, at least my position is, I'm not that worried about what do you call, what you mean with AI, with the outcome. And probably something that I don't know if in the afternoon I'm looking at Javi from here and Ivan, but I'm very much interested in knowing how this AI is fed and how it's manufactured and how it's processed. So the data, I think, is at the moment is still much more relevant than AI, because AI Act has distinguished really well about the risks that are influencing, the AI. But that would be my answer, because it resonates with all discussion about the smart city. It's the same. When a technological disruption came out, we focus on the dysfunctionalities of this technology and then the potentials of that. We are exactly at the moment at the very early stage of AI. So I would say that when we are talking at this point, I was talking about generative AI, not the rest of the very specific and complex, and even the list of cases that I've been putting on that. I think that is much more about generative AI as such. We are not talking about any other complex AI system that could be for curing cancer, for example. I think that that's different, right? But thank you very much for your question. Any other comment? Or okay, please, Jorge. Yes.
It's a challenge that I think you didn't mention is who pays the party?
Sorry?
Who pays this party, Because, nowadays is one of the main barriers, as the computational costs are huge. So even in this very, very non-mature state of the art, to learn you need access, and to have access you need to pay for it, and costs are huge. For example, I don't know, $15 per student per month. Who is going to pay for that? Mm-hmm. Because this is the beginning of the inequality in the first point about accessibility and so on. So even for us as social enterprises or social organizations, or nowadays to pay for the access to innovate, the barrier is huge. So maybe this should be one of the big barriers. Who is going to pay for this? Because if we are going to do it with philanthropic funds, the results are going to be a type of results. If we do it with private funds or finance industry funds. So
another elephant in the room. I think it's difficult to answer to this question. Who pays the party? Who pays the bill? But again, while you were at the beginning, I was curious about what could be the answer, right? But I believe that so far, at least, is why we are in a transition at the moment. Who has paid the bill so far? The big techs. But I would like to bring here Mariana Mazzucato, for instance. Very good paper last week about Amazon, for example. It should pay just by the private sector. It should be paid just by the big techs. The big tech should be the way that they are. I think that they are open questions. And I believe, or I wanted to believe, I don't know if I believe or I wanted to believe, that in Global North, there is probably in some places more than others, but there is an open discussion about who should pay the bill, who should pay the party, and what for. I'm not answering, Jorge.
No,
it's very. I don't know if there is another intervention on the room, but I believe that so far I'm going to. Okay, instead of just talking about the global, because we are in San Sebastian, we are in the Basque Country, we are in Spain. What's the answer that I could just give in here? If you ask everybody, and probably is the reason why we are organizing this summer school, industry is pretty much the only actor. The public sector has no, and probably I don't know if you agree with me because you come from different places, from Madrid, from Canary Islands, from other places in Spain, right? But I would say that the public sector is left behind. I mean, it's not left behind, it's very laggard at the moment. Probably because the capabilities are very, very weak, but the private sector is the only one leading or, going forward with that. So your question about what about us? What about the non-profit? What about the NGOs? And well, I think that you have a key role to play. The point is that what's your share in this market and in this competition? I don't know, but there are some places that they have a better combination. That's why I think that having an international speakers at least is good to hear what's going on in other places, and not focusing just in our mind. But anyway, we have another intervention here.
Yeah, it's just building up on what you're saying, because I think that the cause is not just in the systems, is that you have talked about it. IA is as good as the data it is, and we have a data divide that is crazy, is that majority of the people we are working with, we don't have data about. But it's not just that we don't have data about them, it's that the data that we have is not reliable, is not accessible, and what is worse is that the organizations that we are working with those data, we abide by the same policies than the big techs that they are using, that they have a million times more means to use those data, to drive those data, to jump over all the legislations. We have had now a case in which we have been imposed a new legislation in Mauritania about data use, and we have basically we cannot take out any data from Mauritania, while all the tech that they are operating in Mauritania, they have absolutely all the servers outside of Mauritania. So it's very interesting how all these policies that they have been driven, they are like for the worst case scenario, they don't discriminate of who is using what data, which actors are using what for which use, and then we just don't have first the access to those data, and when we do have, we are abide by policies that they make almost impossible the use of them. Mm-hmm. So I think that this is what is making the rules of the game so different for everybody, and as well, if you are saying, okay, no, this is paid by the big tech, in the moment that the big tech are paying for this, we know which data is going to be used, for what is going to be used, and which data is not going to be there, and is not going to be used for what we want. So.
And I would say, and what's the role of the national governments, for instance? Because at the moment we are relying all in Brussels, in Europe, and also in the UK, I would say, despite Brexit, but which is the role of the national governments? I wouldn't go just down to the scale at regional governments, local governments, but what's the role? But for example, just in the positive side of this, I would say, and why Amsterdam has been auditing algorithms, it's a city. So I mean, at the same time, I mean, I wanted to, sorry about this, probably my position, and I wanted to influence others, but being a very negative is, I mean, very critical is good, but at the same time, I think that we have also cases like, cities. Barcelona is also a good case. How to, for example, all the smart city critical agenda was set up in a very isolated manner at the beginning, then with New York and with Amsterdam by Barcelona. So, I mean, there are good cases as well in Israel, but it's true. I mean, just going to your point, to Jorge and Borja. Borja is going to speak in the afternoon as well. The data flows, I mean, the data restrictions are higher and higher, and that's pretty much influencing the AI development. Yeah, very true. Any other? We have a coffee, so we have 2 minutes. Question, coffee. Any other? You are deserving a coffee, right? Okay, let's go for a coffee. So let's come back at 11:25. Okay, thank you. Okay.